Hello, my name is Jason, and this is
Monty.
And today we're going to be finishing up telling part 4, which is the final part of the life of Samson. And our story comes from Judges chapter 16, and we're actually going to be reading in Bible and basic English today. And it says in verse 1, "Now Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a loose woman and went into her. And it was said to the Gazites, 'Samson is here.' So they went round watching him for all day at the doorway of the town. But at night they kept quiet, saying, 'When daylight comes, we'll put him to death.' So Samson was there to the middle of the night. Then he got up, took a grip upon the doors of the town, pulling them up together with their two supports and their locks, put them on his back, took them up to the top of a hill in front of Hebron. Now after this, he went down and he fell in love with a woman of the valley of Sorek named Delilah. And the chiefs of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, 'Make use of your power over him and see what is the secret of his great strength, so that we may get the better of him, put bands on him, so that we may make him feeble, and every one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver.'" So basically, he went down and found a woman from the valley of Sorek, fell in love with her, and then the Philistines, who obviously, if you've watched our previous parts, he had an obvious problem with them. They had a problem with him. They didn't like him. So they went to her, and when they're in a relationship, and they're like, "So if you can find out what his power is and tell us what it is, we're going to give you money. And yeah, you can keep all of it. We just want him feeble so we can do whatever we want with him, because he's become kind of a nuisance." So Delilah began this long journey that takes place over the rest of this chapter, where she's constantly trying and vying for him to give her the true secret. And he actually deceives her 3 times. I believe the first time he tells her that it is
Binding with undried twine, basically.
Yes. It's just several different ways. But, I mean, again, this is kind of interesting because a lot of themes are repeated in this portion of the story. You know, and usually whenever you're reading a story, you don't want certain parts repeated. But this is what this does, and I think it does this for a reason. I don't think it's just the character Delilah being lazy or Samson just, going with it. I think this is meant to prove a point that Samson was really so wrapped up with her and was so in love with her, or so he thought, I guess. He was so obsessed with her that no matter what, every single time if you read, she would always call to the Philistines. For example, with the 7 bow cords, she would call to the Philistines. They'd come and he would break them, and then so obviously that wouldn't work. And every single time it got him. But obviously it didn't take his strength, so she's constantly vying for that. And you can continue on with the rest of the story then.
One more thing I want to point out about the cords that they didn't dry out and things like that. He told her at first to tie him with like that, and then he told her to tie him with just brand new cords, basically ropes that had never been used before. And she did that, and then you notice as he progresses, he starts getting closer, because the next things he tells her is to weave the 7 locks of my hair, basically braid his hair. Yeah.
Man bun.
A man bun.
This was the first mention of that, by the way. That didn't just happen,
But he talks about his hair at this point. So you see him getting closer. His defenses are going down.
I really love that, by the way. Just kind of like getting more, just almost like he's kind of like taking less control, where he just doesn't care as much because he's gotten closer. I think that's really interesting.
I love the way that kind of happens, the way Delilah's slowly getting into him, the same way that anything that we would do, like Paul said, that what he would do, he would not do. Things like that. Read it for yourself, I can't quote it. But it's amazing how that's sort of a gradual process. But eventually, she gets him to tell her that if she cuts his hair, then he'll be just like any other man. Now, this is someone who has killed hundreds of men with his bare hands, a few more with a jaw's bone. A bone of the jaw of a donkey.
Yes.
And even captured foxes. I don't know if you ever hunted foxes or anything like that, but it's not something that you catch with your hands.
Yeah.
So not only was he powerful in strength, but he was obviously a very quick, a very cunning man, a genius, as a matter of fact. And eventually he breaks down, and then the Philistines get him, or the Philistines, and they tie him up, and they make him grind in a mill, which basically is a job for cattle and things like that.
Basically, he was strong enough to do it. That wasn't
he was still strong enough to do it, but he was pushing in a circle, basically, if I got my history correct, to grind corn and things like that. And they take him there, and his hair starts to grow again. Now this is something very interesting. We do not read that he has a relationship with God while he's in the prison cell.
See, I always see this as interesting because, you know, what God could have done here, and, you know, I sort of question why he didn't. But then it becomes clear when you continue reading. But what he could have done is, well, Samson, he broke his Nazirite vow, had his hair cut, in fact, even laid down in the lap of the woman who was cutting it while another man came and cut his hair. So he's fully given himself over, fully cut off his hair, his strength is gone. But then it says right here, that while he was going, so he's not even fully in the mill yet, but while he is going to the mill, his hair begins to grow back. And I think that's a wonderful moment that didn't really have to be there, but I think it just shows that God's love and God's grace carries through even when we make bad and stupid mistakes.
Yes. Now, his hair starts growing again. And like I said, we don't read of him having a relationship with God while he's in this prison. But later on, the prince wants a big party. And basically, if you'll look at the structure of the Philistine buildings and things like that, and a lot of buildings were like this, everything was held up by columns. Columns weren't simply for looks. It really became popular with Rome and Greece around that time. And it really became a very important part. So these things were holding up buildings made of marble and of stone, very, very heavy rock. So they weren't flimsy, and they weren't made of styrofoam like a lot of columns are now. Yeah, like we've got columns out in front of the building we're in now, but it wouldn't take much. I could probably push those down. Yeah, but you understand, he was probably dealing with marble or granite or something very, very strong of that nature, at least stone. But there's a boy holding him, and he's making sport for them. Basically, they brought him out. They have put out both of his eyes. He can't see a thing, and they're mocking him, and they're making him do tricks, basically, while he's blind and handicapped. Yeah. But the boy who's holding his chains, he tells that boy, he says, "Take me to the pillars that hold up the roof." And there were, I can't remember, how many did it say?
3,000.
3,000 Philistines on the roof. And he prays to God. He says, "Give me my strength one more time so that I can kill all of these Philistines and myself." And that's what he does. And I brought up the point that he didn't have a relationship with God for a reason. That we don't read of him having a relationship with God in the prison house. Because one thing about the Old Testament, every time you read it, the Old Testament is mostly about obedience. Despite the fact that Samson disobeyed.
Especially just in this book. Judges, I mean, just about
especially
every single chapter that the children of Israel are doing something they're not supposed to. So this especially does mean something, I think, here.
And Samson, you read, he wasn't much of a man, but most of what he did wasn't out of righteous indignation. It was out of his own pride and out of his anger. So he was a very hot-headed man. Yeah. And I don't mean to demote characters of the Bible or anything like that, but he's not exactly the most moral person we look up to in the Bible. And at this time, he says that he wants his strength back. And God looks and sees that his hair is long and uncut. And he keeps his promise at that time. I thought that was really interesting. And the columns fall, and all of the Philistines there and himself were killed.
Which is interesting because right after that it says that he killed more people that day than he'd killed any other time or point in his life, which is incredible. And I think this story really shows that God's grace, even when we mess up and we make stupid mistakes, it'll carry us through and it'll allow us to do sometimes even greater than we could ever accomplish on our own merit and sometimes before we fell. And so I think this is a beautiful story. Thank you for being with us for the past, 3 months almost? We've been telling this story? Almost 4 months. But it's been great. It's been grand, and we'll be getting to something brand new. What do you think?
I don't know
Let's
yet.
do some in the New Testament. We haven't done anything in the New Testament
That's
really
a
all
good
that
idea.
big. So, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Tell us your favorite moment from this story in the comment section down below with all that said and done. My name is Jason. He is.
Monty.
We're signing off.